What's up, everybody? Welcome to the CanesInSight Daily podcast powered by Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. I promise no Derek Cooper talk today. We have moved on. Recruiting's pretty much wrapped up. Maybe we'll cover something as someone commits, but we are focusing on the 2025 Miami Hurricanes. Going to start doing position by position breakdowns, starting, of course, with the quarterback spot, which we'll be talking about today. Also, going to have a nice interview that Pete did with Ernest Ude, the big athletic center for the Miami Hurricanes. Kansas transfer, looks like a big-time player, I believe a former five-star player. So we'll get that interview. Also continue our look at some of the past recruiting classes. Really fun series telling us about, fun, depending on your perspective, maybe depressing, but kind of showing us how we got to this point and how we can get past it by breaking down all the recruiting classes really up to the Mario Cristobal era. But we'll start, of course, with the current team and the latest we are hearing and seeing and projecting. First, talk about some folks where I'm continuously projecting very high-quality legal representation. That is Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. If you or someone you care about has been injured in an accident, you could be entitled to significant compensation. Dial 1-800-747-FREE, 1-800-747-3733. Take back control of your life with Anajar and Levine. Pete, hop in here.
Good morning.
How we doing?
Doing great, man. Ready to talk about this QB room. Obviously, moving on from the events of this weekend. Let me tell you something. A lot of people didn't want us to talk about it, D, but the views speak otherwise. People were very interested in what was happening. So we're moving on, though.
Yeah, exactly. Like I all the comments say stop talking about it, and then the views say otherwise. But we're done. That one's put to bed until we try to flip him later on here in a couple months, and then we'll do another Derek Cooper episode when we're flipping him from Texas after a very successful season or during a very successful season. But anyways, it's time to talk. Look, it's July 21st. Camp opens basically in a week, so it is time to talk about what we have in the boat. The team that's going to be lining up against Notre Dame in the Rock, and the most important thing, obviously, who's taking that first snap in spring. The picture was a little murkier, not because we didn't know who the projected starter was, but because he wasn't throwing. Now, Carson Beck, been throwing all offseason, looks ready to rock and roll at quarterback. So a little more clarity at this position.
Yeah, obviously still the questions. It's just going to be natural, even though we're hearing very good things about his health and his progress. Until those live bullets start flying, I don't think that we can be 100% sure. And that's not saying that we're doubting what we're hearing, D. That's just the nature of an injury like this at this position, right? So I think that still remains to be seen. We'll get an even clearer picture of it now when camp starts, I believe, because a lot of what we're hearing right now is just player workouts, right? And the pads aren't obviously popping, and we expect things to be. We still expect him to kind of be brought along, right? I don't think there's going to be much contact for him in this early part of camp, and maybe camp at all. But I definitely think that there's going to be a lot of excitement once that happens, because we talked about it all spring. It was hard, just being real here, for this offense to get going at times during spring because the quarterback play was not consistent enough. Right. And we'll talk about that with the rest of this group and what that means moving forward. But I think the offense needs to get some confidence early in camp here, because you have so many moving pieces of the receiver position, so many guys who haven't played necessarily all that much. So very important for really Carson Beck to get off to a good start here when camp opens here in the next couple weeks, 10 days or so.
Yeah, and the momentum will be there from offseason, because I've heard he's full go, throwing hard. The arm looks like an NFL arm. The athleticism looks like NFL athleticism. He's 6'4", IQ off the charts. These guys, the people observing Carson Beck, just had Cam Ward, number 1 overall pick, the best quarterback that we've ever seen. So they're calibrated to the highest level when you talk about knowing what it's supposed to look like. With Beck, they're saying the IQ is there. We know what IQ is. We just had Cam Ward. The arm, meaning velocity, the ability to layer throws, not just throw everything like a fastball, hit different parts of the field, that is there. The athleticism is there, the twitchiness. So, they think this guy's a first-round type pick, talent-wise. as advertised. The arm is back. He and the IQ and the toughness, they're not worried about at all. Again, different type of leader than Cam Ward. We've talked about this before. The differences between a Cam Ward and a Carson Beck, to me, out of the pocket, Ward just used the whole field. He was very much a guard, right? You saw him in high school as a basketball player, leading scorer in the history of his high school. He was a combo guard, scoring, passing, just kind of seeing the whole floor. With Beck, when he rolls out, he can roll out. I think he's just as athletic as Ward from a run, jump kind of standpoint, but maybe doesn't have that just playmaking vision of the whole field that made Ward pretty unique. Also got him in trouble with some of those across body throws. And then just leadership wise, different personality, not as vocal, just not as vocal as a Cam Ward. But IQ wise, I've heard they're very similar. And that's a good thing because Ward's at the top of the scale there. I heard arm wise, very similar. And really, if you put him in a decathlon, Beck might win, right? So athletically, very similar as well. People are extremely, extremely excited about Beck. The word electric was used just to describe his talent. They think he's going to be one of the best players in the ACC. And as we go through the stats here, 2023, when he had Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey, two of the best young players in the NFL, although they were injured at times during this year, 3,941 yards, 24 touchdowns, 6 INTs, an incredible 167.9 quarterback rating, one of the most efficient, productive players in the country, projected number 1 overall pick coming off that year. Last year took a dip. We've talked a ton about how Georgia led the nation in drops, how the offensive line really underachieved. The running game was in the hundreds. So we know all those things. But even if you take that all into account, you look at the numbers, 3,485 yards, almost 3,500 yards, 28 touchdowns, actually threw 4 more touchdowns than he did the year before. The interceptions went up, goes from 6 to 12. You could tell he was forcing it a lot. And the yards per attempt went down because he just didn't have the playmakers he had before. But still, I mean, 3,500 yards, that's a good Miami Hurricanes season. So I think even if you take last year's Beck, it's not like he was like a shell of himself last year, just maybe not as efficient.
Comment here from Peony Boys says, I was at the stadium when the team was running the stadium. We saw the pictures that came out on social media there. He says, Emory's a lot bigger than I thought. Tony is looking bigger than JoJo.
Yeah. By the way, thank you, Peony Boys, as always, for the contribution. Plus the inside info, man. That's nice as well. Yeah, we got a lot of size in the quarterback room when you really break it down. Obviously, Beck is a bigger quarterback. We'll get into Emory Williams in a second, but he has some size. Malachi Tony, I'm looking for the picture. I don't know. I know FSU.
It was his mom who tweeted it out, the one you're thinking of.
It's funny because I know we always make fun of FSU because they're always like posting shirtless pictures of the players. So I'm not sure we're going to go in that direction with Malachi Tony, but he definitely looked bigger. And you can tell he's been working out. Malachi Tony, and we'll get to this in the receiver breakdown, but I just think superstar potential, or at least star potential, is what you hear, right? So we'll see where that goes. But yeah, Emory Williams got size. Carson Beck has size as well. This is somebody just focusing on Beck now. When you look at the tools that he brings to the table, 6'4", legit, 220, legit. You look at him in person, his upper body's pretty skinny, which, I mean, Tom Brady had a pretty skinny upper body. These guys shouldn't be bodybuilders. You look at Will Levis, it's kind of a tight, overly muscled quarterback. Upper body's fine. His lower body, Beck, you've been around him, Pete, very strong. He's just a very strong base. When you see him, the 220 to me is legit just because he's so strong through the legs.
Yeah, you mentioned how if they just tested like in a combine setting, Beck would probably test better overall. That's a very small part of the position as we understand, but I think that's probably something that people are underestimating about Beck is that athleticism. I think Ward, his feel for the game inside of the pocket and eluding pressure and then being able to make the plays downfield. I don't know that Beck has that whole package in his arsenal, but in terms of just driving the ball downfield, and again, with what we know about the progression of the recovery, it looks like he's going to be able to do what he did on tape when you saw some of those big time throws at Georgia. But I think his arm he might have a bigger arm than Ward too. Now, Ward made some throws that Beck cannot make in contorting his body certain ways. Again, like we're talking about that. I don't know that Beck has that in his arsenal. But if we're talking about a purely clean pocket and letting these guys just rip it downfield, Beck might have the bigger arm.
And Pete, I love multi-sport comparisons, multi-sport quarterbacks, multi-sport athletes. The reason being, look at the NFL, look at what plays. If to me, you're either a running quarterback who can also pass, which is like Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, legitimate runners, or you're a multi-sport player. Look at Joe Burrow, basketball, really a basketball first kind of player until he got to college and refined his passing. His passing was not what it is now coming out of college because he was more of a basketball player. Cam Ward, the leading scorer in his high school, really more of a basketball player than a quarterback until later on in the process. You have Patrick Mahomes, basketball and baseball. Josh Allen, basketball and baseball. Justin Herbert, basketball and baseball. Tom Brady was drafted as a baseball player. Aaron Rodgers played all those sports as well. So, that's really, to me, the name of the game when it comes to quarterbacks. You're either a runner and a passer, or you're a multi-sport guy, or both. So with Beck, his sport was baseball. He was a third baseman committed to the University of Florida as a third baseman and as a freshman in high school. So here you got the swing here. It's a good looking athletic swing, and obviously with the size. So with Beck, if you compare him to Ward, I think you look at their sports backgrounds. Ward is a combo guard, right? What's a combo guard do in basketball? They can pass, they can see the floor, and if they need to keep it for themselves, they know how to keep it for themselves and make the play themselves as far as scoring. That's Ward, right? He's always seeing the whole floor. He's throwing it to every part of the field, no matter where he's at, in the pocket, outside the pocket. He just has that kind of vision and that confidence to see those angles from basketball. Also, if he needs to run it, he'll run it. If he needs to pass it, he'll pass it. He's a combo guard. With Beck, he is your classic third baseman. What's third base in baseball? That's your guy with some size. 6'4" is pretty ideal. That's going to be an athletic player, much more athletic than your average first baseman. And then, of course, you need an arm. Third base to first base, that's a very far distance. You got to have the arm strength, and the athleticism plays into the quick reactions. It's the hot corner. You're right there from the, for a right-handed hitter, the ball's going right to you if they pull it. So I think with all that, Beck is a third baseman. He has size. He's a great athlete. He has a strong arm. Maybe not, again, the whole field reader outside the pocket that Ward is. In the pocket, Beck is great at reading the whole field. He is not someone that locks onto targets. You talking to people at Georgia, just in general, everything you hear about Beck and everything you see on tape, he'll hit the running backs for checkdowns. He'll hit the tight end. He'll hit whoever's open. He has great vision in the pocket. Ward, probably better vision outside the pocket. But again, you see this dude right here. If you're committed to Florida as a freshman, you're talking about MLB, pro type talent.
Yep, I agree.
So yeah, that's to me the story on Beck. Pete, let me ask you, because I've been talking about some of the things I've heard about Beck as far as just, the arm talent, the athleticism, the confidence. I've heard people compare, like if you talk about TVD, right? So Ward is the top of the scale as far as being an outspoken leader, but also being one of the guys, not being that outspoken leader that everybody finds annoying. The outspoken leader that's also has the credibility and people like him and respect him. TVD would be the very quiet, kind of always to himself, just didn't project a lot of confidence, just kind of a down personality. Nothing negative as far as like, I never heard him really be a bad guy, but just not a lot coming out. With Beck, I hear very confident. You see against the girls, he knows he's good, and he's confident in his skin. He's from Florida. He's not from, Connecticut. He's from Jacksonville, Florida, played in Georgia. This environment, being in the Southeast, nothing new to him, but not the extrovert that Ward is. So just what have you heard about Beck? Any tidbits? I know you talked to a lot of people beyond personality, talent, whatever it is.
And I said this on a show maybe 3 weeks ago, but the biggest theme that I've heard with Beck, just not to make everything in comparison with Ward, but you're coming off of a guy who just had the season he had, and obviously any of us would take that any year, right? As the quarterback of the University of Maryland, a number one pick. And if things go a certain way, probably should have been the Heisman winner as well. But Cam Ward wasn't a known player to these Miami guys when he came to Miami. He had to, his personality was what it was, but these guys weren't watching Washington State games. They really did not know who he was. Certain guys, yes, heard of him. And like when he became a name in the portal, yes, people saw his stuff and were excited, but this was not a household name whatsoever. He had to come in and kind of let himself be known to this team, right? And show who he was. And very quickly, none of that was a fake thing, right? That's just who Cam was, right? We've made that clear. We've seen that now over the last year plus, and we'll see what happens in the pros. I've said before, I'm concerned about the situation at Tennessee, but at the end of the day, Carson Beck came in here, and what keeps being told to me is from players and coaches, 24-3. And it was an amazing situation around him at Georgia. Defensively last year, we know the struggles with the drops. We know the run game wasn't what it has been in the past. We know he did not have Brock Bowers and Ladd McConkey as weapons, but that goes a long way when you step into a locker room and guys are very familiar with who you are when you're playing in prime time every week in the SEC. And I mean, that's been the biggest thing is that, yeah, he's not the same guy as Cam in terms of getting in people's faces and really challenging guys. But that's not always what you need in a situation, right? Especially when you have a CJ Daniels in that receiver room, who I think that's going a long way in the development of those guys or the maturation process of those guys, as I should say.
Yeah, and you look at last year, Xavier Restrepo, Elijah Arroyo, I'd say those were his top two targets by far. Then you go to a Jacoby George, who's a senior, 4-year senior. Sam Brown, older player. I think he was like a 5th-year player. Isaiah Horton, 3rd-year player. Mature type personality. So it's not like Ward was bringing along young players like a JoJo Trader or a Nye Carr. I don't know if his personality is great. I think he's if I had to pick a quarterback's intangibles to be the quarterback of the Kings, I'm picking Cam Ward over anybody I've been around, even Dorsey. But for young players, he's very much, I'm trying to win now. Of course, he's out one and done. He had that extra, he was not afraid to get after these guys. So I'm not sure young players were the best fit for what he was trying to do. Obviously, the number one offense in the country, number one passing offense in the country, didn't. Whatever he wanted to do was what was done. It worked out. But I don't think that I
don't think he had the patience is probably the word. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a great way to put it. So Beck, he's also one and done. He's trying to go to the NFL, but
it was a win. It was a win now. And like, he's got to get his situation right. So I don't know that he was going to be sitting there with God. I mean, let's not say he didn't do that either, but I think the frustrations with the young guys probably came to play a little quicker than some of the older guys.
Yeah, and look, Beck, I don't think will chew out a receiver the same way that Ward will, a young receiver. He'll hold him accountable, but Beck is he was class of 2020. He signed to play college before the pandemic, so he's old and he's a veteran. He'll hold them accountable, but he's not going to maybe attack them the same way a Ward would. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, just different personalities for better and worse. CJ Daniels is, to me, really the key with those young receivers, as far as Beck's also not going to, mentor the young receivers necessarily. He'll throw to them. But I think CJ Daniels will probably be the guy that we didn't necessarily have in the room last year that's going to be really investing in those young receivers. Because I don't think last year you had veterans, but the veterans you had last year were very much focused on their own performance, which they needed to be. I mean, they were trying to get to the next level. The results speak for themselves. It was the top passing game in the country. But with Daniels, I just think he's more just talking to him and being around him and talking to people about him. He's much more conscious about helping the young receivers. And then Beck is not going to chew him out. So it's going to be a different dynamic at that position. I think the quarterback has a lot to do with it.
Canes fan 1424 says, I think the wide receivers get a lot more rotation this year compared to last year. I agree. I think there was a lot more set in stone last year coming in. And there's a bit more up in the air. you look at slot, for example, there's a lot of people who think Tony Johnson could be a nice contributor for this team, but at the same time, Malachi Tony continues to emerge, and I'm kind of getting the vibe I got on Elijah Lofton last year, where like people weren't ready to say he was like the best player on the offense or anything like that, but he was a guy that people thought was up there, right? And I think with Malachi Tony, it's a very, very similar feeling.
Yeah, I agree totally. When you talk about people with Malachi Tony, and we have the receiver breakdown, which we'll do in a little bit, but just to your point, Canes fan, 14-24, the buzz you hear on Malachi is more of like, this guy's going to be a household name than this guy's going to help us as a freshman. It's much more like, hey, this guy's going to be, the guy that people focus on, the star. He'd be a freshman still. I'm not saying he's going to get 1,200 yards, but he'll be the one we talk about. So we'll see. But yeah, you're right. Lofton was like that. Jordan Lyle was like that. OJ Frederic was like that the year before. Ruben Bain was like that. Now Noah was like that. So we'll see how it plays out. But definitely Tony's getting that kind of buzz. Here's a question for you, Pete, or comment I want you to touch on. He said, C. Marcus Smith says, if Carson Beck had transferred to Ohio State, Notre Dame, Oregon, etc., those teams would be the favorite to win the national championship. He's at Miami. Pundits say he's a question mark. Ward proved them wrong, so will Beck.
I mean, those teams were all in the playoff last year, so I agree they would be favored to win the championship. There's questions on Miami outside of Beck. Let's be real, guys. So just trying to look from the outside perspective, yeah, it would be viewed differently. He would be looked at. I don't think that people would necessarily. I think there'd still be questions about him, but it would probably be viewed in a different light. But I don't know that Miami would be favored. I still think there's a lot more questions at Miami than maybe some. I think the way you're looking at Ohio State right now is if they had any sort of established quarterback, I mean, they'd be the runaway favorites to win it again.
Yeah, but I agree with what he's saying as far as like just the Beck part. Some of the question marks with Beck are obviously going to be about the receivers at Miami, because it's true. If you put Beck in Ohio State, and I'm a Miami fan, and I'm looking at a situation and I know Beck is healthy and the elbow's kind of behind him, I'd be projecting him to win the Heisman with Jeremiah Smith. Notre Dame, they got good receivers.
He's better. He's better than Will Howard. So
significantly better than Will Howard. I mean, Julian Sain, we'll see. I'm not the biggest believer. I think his physical skills are less than what I think Beck has and what others have. I'm not the biggest Julian Sain believer, but he should be fine because of the people around him. Notre Dame, quarterbacks never played a snap. Obviously, Beck would give them more experience with all the other stuff they have. Oregon, Dante Moore, some question marks there. I think he'll be fine. But, Beck, yeah, I hear what you're saying. If you put Beck in any of those situations, we'd be talking about Beck more as a Heisman candidate. So are the questions about Beck, or are they more about what's around him, which is a different conversation?
Yeah, I saw like Joel Klatt, who I know Canes fans kind of get on sometimes, but he was pretty he had some pretty good stuff to say about Miami, but his biggest question was who are the guys who are replacing the guys around him. Drex talking about Beck, who has a third base commit for UF the sophomores, and he said, so I think he has that shortstop, middle infielder, arm slot that Cam utilized, just wasn't asked to do it at Georgia. I don't know that Cam was asked to do it at any point in his career. I just think that's his natural ability. So look, Beck, from time to time, I'm not saying he can't make those throws, but I don't think it's going to be as much of a part of his game as Cam was, where Cam played kind of off script so much.
Yeah, but I will say Beck is very good at those short passes, right? We think about the arm slot a lot of times, talking about passes that are short, intermediate. Beck's got very good placement there. He is a good athlete, so he's not going to be stiff and unnatural, right? If he goes off his spot and he has to make those throws, right? So I think he can do that, and it'll be interesting to see, man, what happens with Beck. I think the receivers, to me, were a bright spot of spring, talking about the Dalen Upshaws, the Malachi Tonys, the Josh Moores, JoJo
Dalen
Trader.
Upshaw was mentioned to me the other day too, and I know you keep bringing him up. Upshaw, he was someone I didn't mention yesterday in the notes that I had, but he was a guy that was mentioned to me. Yeah,
so those guys all to me look very good in spring. You had CJ Daniels not healthy. He was coming back. He came back at the very end, made a couple spectacular catches. I'm talking about like Odell Beckham catches. Had some rusty stuff too. I mean, he was dropped a couple passes. He was coming back from injury. But you expect him coming off that surgery to repair his foot, which was messed up when he played at LSU. You're hoping more that Liberty type explosiveness when he averaged 20 yards a catch. But we'll see him. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I didn't know you were finished.
No, I was going to say, I like the receivers, but I want to see the receivers now with Beck because in spring, we only saw them with Emory, Jud, and Nickel, who we'll be talking about here shortly.
Drew Linfield asking why Jackson Cantwell is the third best lineman in the class now and now ninth nationally on 247. Is it because he signed with Miami? I don't know that he's ever been the first on 247. He's still number one player on the composite, which again averages out all of the rankings, and that's kind of like the standard for the industry because it takes out just using one site's ranking. So he's still number one. D, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he's ever been the number one guy on 247's rankings.
No, I think he was and he dropped. I might be wrong, but I think he was and then he dropped.
I think we've talked about this though already. Like we've talked about this.
He dropped before. Go ahead.
Before the Miami commitment, I believe he stayed at number one though, or it might have been right after. But
they had put it in the hopper. But then they announced all the new commits or all the new like positions on the rankings after he committed. So it looked like he dropped right after he committed. But from what I'm told from 247 people, and I have no reason to doubt it, he was in the mix or he was already scheduled to drop. And then the commitment happened. Then the rankings came out. Here's what I'll say about this. It's recruiting. No one knows. No one can tell you with certainty who the best tackle is in the country. I mean, it might be some two-star that is playing tight end right now. I mean, nobody knows. It might be some Samoan that we never heard of. No one knows who the top offensive tackle in the country is right now. That's why they project. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. With 247, which is, again, the outlier with Cantwell, he is the composite number one overall player, like Pete said. So the consensus number one overall player. Or, I don't say consensus, the number one overall player when you put everybody together. I think with 247, just from some of the things they've said, they are worried about Cantwell's pass blocking based on what he showed at the Under Armour game, which he attended as an underclassman. And I saw that game. He did struggle pass blocking. I mean, it was, if you watch that game, it might be on ESPNU or ESPN Plus or something, or YouTube. You can probably go watch it. He did struggle pass blocking. I posted about it on CanesInSight. I'm like, look, man, this guy's got some work to do. You can tell he hasn't done a lot. With that said, the guy that's number one on 247's tackle list, Felix Ojo, just committed to Texas Tech. He went to one of this 5-star challenge recently, of which Jontavius Wyman was the MVP, Miami commit at DB. A bunch of top guys were out there. And I heard he struggled mightily, talking about Felix Ojo, in that camp. And that a lot of people, talking about like college coaches, college personnel guys, are questioning 247 for having Felix Ojo number one. Now I could see why Felix Ojo is number one. He's got the length. He's got a lot of just track and field markers. He's a good, good thrower. Obviously nothing even close to what Cantwell is. He's a young player for his age. He did well at the Army All-America game. So they're all entitled to their own opinion. But I think this is just a situation. 247 is going on a limb with Cantwell. We'll see how it turns out. I think historically 247 has been very good at rankings lately. Probably, just the last, I don't know, the group that was in the draft last year, 247 was lower on that list than some of the other recruiting services as far as projecting guys properly from when they were in high school to the pros when you go back and look at it. But that's just one draft class. We'll see how it all goes, and they could be right. I personally am very confident with Cantwell because he does have questions pass blocking. Hasn't been asked to do it a ton in high school. But I think when you look at the verified athleticism, shuttle time, he has that. He has the length and size, obviously. His power in his hands based on his track measurements is otherworldly. No one's ever thrown like this as a high school prospect in our lifetimes. And then he's IQ and his intelligence and just willingness to get better and be coached is top of the charts. Both his parents were in the Olympics. So put that all together. I feel confident projecting him number one because he has the traits and he has the mentality to capitalize on those traits. Plus, he's being coached by Alex Mirabal, who has the best tackle in the NFL right now in Penei Sewell, has a top 10 pick here, Francis Mauigoa. We've seen his work at that position. So I feel good about the Cantwell part, but everybody's entitled to their own opinion.
I wanted to get to this question real quick before I talk about the rest of the room, right? Because obviously there's guys outside of Carson Beck. Papa Cool, who might be making this comment tongue-in-cheek a bit. He says, how come Cam Ward can work out with Tommy Castellanos, but not Beck when he came down? Well, a few things. Look, having dealt with these guys, especially after getting drafted, their focus is on themselves. I guarantee you Cam probably had no idea who was going to be at that workout other than the receivers that were out there. And as a guy who was just the first pick of the draft, and I say this respectfully, in respect to this situation, Cam Ward does not give two you-know-whats about Carson Beck in Miami right now. That's the last thing on his mind. He's focused on his season. I'm sure he has love for Miami, but I'm sure he just does not care right now. He's focused on getting ready for his season.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Beck cares either. I mean, Beck is
it goes both ways.
They're the same age. Beck was projected over Cam Ward last year, so I don't think either of them are. They're focused on what they're trying to do. Castellanos could work out with Tom Brady, and I think he's still going to have some troubles throwing the football, seeing over the line, not quitting, all the things that the question marks you have on a Castellanos. So, and I don't know if the agent's the same. A lot of times those things Pete knows are like agent driven or like work. Like if they have the same trainer, they work out together. If they have the same agent, they work out together. Isn't it like they have the same social media manager, they work out together? It's like things like that, right? That lead to these training relationships.
Yeah. It's a lot of it's superficial. It's not really like that. I mean, look, especially for Ward, he's trying to see which receivers are there. That's really all he cares about.
Yeah, exactly. So, I wouldn't read too much into that. All right, Pete. So next up, Emory Williams. I think with Emory, this is the important thing to know here is that Miami wanted to keep him, right? He had the opportunity to leave and pursue a starting job, and there's 130 opportunities. Someone would have given him a chance to compete to be a starter. He chose to stay at Miami. Miami wanted to keep him. I can tell you, that was a priority for them to keep him. I can tell you that talking to people. Now, the question we'll get in the comments, and I can understand where people are coming from, is, wait, if they were so eager to keep him, why did they not let him throw in the games that he's played? Clemson is a true freshman. FSU is a true freshman. Then last year, second half of the bowl game against Iowa State, very run-heavy scheme, a lot of short passes. Like, it never felt like you were just letting him rip. So if you trust him so much, why do you never let him rip when he's in there, particularly last year when he's already been an older player? Good questions, but I'm told Miami valued Emory Williams. He's had his moments in practice where he's distributing the ball very well, accurate thrower, got great size, great intangibles. With the question with him, question I've always had with him since high school is just the fluidity and athleticism. I think when you see Beck and him side by side, you see that just difference in twitch and just kind of fluidity and movement skills. But the IQ is there, the size is there, the toughness is there, the team effort, team kind of mentality is there. He can throw an accurate football. He can throw a touch. It's going to come down to how does he do with live bullets, with the guys trying to hit him and he has to move a little bit, which we've seen so far. He struggled. How much improvement has he made? We won't know till he's in. Hopefully he's not in unless it's like a blowout, right? Because you want Carson Beck to stay healthy.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a huge question mark looming. Of course, if Beck does miss any time, there's going to be probably a nice little battle here during camp. But as you just mentioned, them making sure he stayed, right? I think that makes it pretty hard for me to believe that he's not going to be the number 2 on this team, D. So yeah. Luke Nickel, I think, is going to have an opportunity to push. Jud Anderson, we've been fans of his upside, but when you're talking about the backup quarterback, it needs to be someone you absolutely trust, not to like turn the ball over. And I think that you're going to probably be more prone to trust an Emory in that sort of situation. But Luke Nickel was making, as we'll get more into him now in a second, but made some good progress there at the end of spring. I just don't know that he's ready to be QB number 2.
So Kyle makes a point here. He says, fans are stupid. Iowa State was awful against the run and third nationally against the pass. That's why you try to pound the football. I think that's true. Now, the other side would say, well, Cam Ward, was throwing it like there was no one playing defense, and he had his three of his 4 top receivers out, and he was basically, like passing the ball like there was no one there. Obviously, that's Cam Ward, number 1 overall pick. So I could see both sides of that discussion. Real quick before we get to Jud Anderson or Luke Nickel, whichever one you want to take it next. Nick Isaac says, maybe too early to answer this, but let's say Beck has the big season we expect him to have. Hopefully goes first round. That's what I would expect if he does have a good season. Do we get another portal quarterback? I love Luke, but I have a hard time saying no to this. I'm not going to go on the extended rant that I always do. I am a strong, steadfast believer. Get portal quarterbacks. I've heard all the arguments against it. They're all, to me, not very compelling. I mean, you talk about Miami Hurricanes, says Ken Dorsey. Ken Dorsey graduated in 2002, so it's been 23 years. One quarterback has taken a snap in NFL games since Ken Dorsey. You know who it was, Pete?
Brock Berlin.
Brock Berlin. Transfer way before the portal.
Was it the Rams?
Yep. There you go. Portal, pre-portal transfer. He transferred from Florida. Who was the best quarterback since Brock? I mean, you could make an argument for Kaya. I would say De'Ara King, as far as an individual dominant player, leader, etc., was our best quarterback until Cam Ward. All 3 of those guys transfers. Cam Ward, number 1 overall pick of the draft. If Carson Beck has a good year, you're talking about another first-round pick. Certainly someone's going to at least probably take a snap in the NFL. So if you look at this pattern, in those 23 years, we signed a lot of high school guys in between, from the number 1 overall quarterback, number 10, you name it, all the way down the line. And they didn't do anything. So the portal has had a much higher success rate at the University of Miami than anything else. It's undeniable since Dorsey. Just look at the results. Brock, De'Ara King, Cam Ward, now hopefully Carson Beck. So to me, I'm going to the portal all day, every day. You look at the draft, almost all portal guys last year. Aside from Jalen Milroe, I believe every single player was from the portal. You had a couple FCS kids. Other than that, everybody else was from the portal last year in the draft. So to me, it's like the most common sense in the world. Here's Canes Cat saying, we got some good QBs, man. Stop it. I'm hearing about Kaya, hearing about Morris, I'm hearing about Ja'Cory. Not one of those guys played, snapped the ball in the NFL. Not one.
As on the active roster, yeah. Morris
a snap.
Well, Morris in preseason. Morris got snaps.
But not regular season.
Yeah, Kaya may have gotten snaps too in the preseason as well. Remember, guys, Kaya had a pretty bad vertebrae injury that happened with the Lions as well. So that kind of effectively ended his career. He had to medically retire. But yeah, we're talking about guys who have like Brocklin started a game.
He played it. And look, I love Kaya. We love Kaya. We loved Kaya since he was a 2-star. When he was committed as a 2-star, or we first offered him as a 2-star, I said he's better than Kevin Olsen, who we had just signed as the highly rated guy. So I've been a Kaya fan. Stephen Morris, I've been a Stephen Morris fan. They were good, solid players. But if you're talking about the best quarterbacks we've had since Dorsey, I'm going to take Cam Ward, obviously number 1. I'm taking De'Ara King, number 2. And probably taking Brock Berlin, number 3. Maybe the rest of them fight out for 4th. Those top 3 guys all in the portal. I suspect Carson Beck will jump right into that.
Reek Flair says, what if Kaya stayed in 2017? Shaking my head. I don't know that was ever going to work, man. The relationship was pretty broken between him and the Ricks.
Yeah, Canes Cat's in the comments. He's wrong about a lot of stuff. Kaya wasn't a 2-star. He ended up as a 4-star, but when we got offered him, when James Coley offered him, he was like a no-star. No one ever heard of him. Pete, you remember this when we first offered Brad Kaya. He was a no-star.
Miami was his first major offer. I think Boise was the only other school. It was Boise that had offered, and he was like getting predictions in the early prediction era to Boise State, and then Miami came in.
Right. And then another comment from Canes Cat saying, who cares if Dorsey was trashing the NFL? He's our best quarterback ever. First of all, Dorsey played in the NFL. He actually played 16 games, believe it or not, in the NFL, even with his physical deficiencies. But yeah, like again, Dorsey was a high school guy. And this is way before the portal era. In the 23 years since Dorsey, I would say our 4 best quarterbacks. We'll see Carson Beck. Let's see our 3 best quarterbacks. Cam Ward, De'Ara King, Brock Berlin, we're all portal. I don't know who you'd kick out of there. Maybe Brock, I guess. But if Brock was in that offense that some of these guys were with some of these receivers he had and some of the offensive lines that these guys had in the 2010s, I think Brock would be doing great. Obviously, he played in the NFL. So, I strongly believe in the portal. If you step back from Miami, look at the NFL draft. Whoever's on the computer and disagrees with what I'm saying right now, pull up the NFL draft last year, quarterback position, and see who got drafted that was not from the portal. Jalen Milroe, and that's it. Everybody else was from the portal. And you had 2 FCS guys. Everybody else was from the portal. So
Canes,
common sense to me.
Okay, this is a funny comment here. Canes Cat C says, I didn't see Brock Berlin, so I can't comment, but you can comment on Ken Dorsey, who was before him.
Yeah. SB Kane says, is Beck 100%? No school will say either way, but curious what we're hearing. Yes. Now, here's what I'll say with Beck. If he gets like a nick or something that happens in the offseason, he might sit out longer just because he's, like we know what he can do, and he's had injury concerns, so you don't want to push it. But as far as like full go, that's what's going on. Drex, every quarterback in the playoff semis last year was portal quarterbacks. Chat what we're talking about. I mean, look, Riley Leonard, Will Howard, who are obviously the two final ones. Dylan Gabriel last year. Just thinking of the top teams. I don't know who else was in the mix as far as those top squads. Those are the 3 that jump out: Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard, Riley Leonard. I'm sure there were more, but as far as like the top teams, that kind of jumps out to me. Sam Levitt was a transfer. Quinn Ewers was a transfer. So, I mean, just kind of go down the line.
All right, let's talk about a couple of these other young guys here, Luke and Jud Anderson.
I'll start with Jud. Let's just go seniority. So Jud Anderson, Pete, you've been out there, and I want to ask your thoughts on this because we've talked about this offline a bunch. When you see Jud Anderson in the warm-up line, you're talking about the way it's supposed to look. He's 6'6", possibly 6'7", and he's extremely coordinated. So a lot of times these tall guys, they look a little goofy. That's why you don't see too many 6'6" plus quarterbacks in the NFL, right? It's hard to coordinate at that spot. Travis Thomas, I know this is your guy, Jud. So this one's for you.
By the way, Travis, we are probably the biggest Jud fans out there of like the Canes media. I would say we've definitely, because people were very down on Jud when he was a take. It was early in Dawson's coaching career at Miami. It was like his first recruiting cycle, right, D? So it was kind of like, oh, this is the guy that we're going to take in this class. And a lot of people were down on him. The tools are there. And sorry to cut you off, D, but I just wanted to put out there that we're fans of his, but should he be the backup this year? I don't know yet.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, Pete. And, with Jud, it's like I said, the size of the coordination stands out. He is smooth as silk in terms of just moving around. Basketball players, a double-double player as a front court player. And that's when they return to that, because we talked about it earlier. I like to look at not just are they multi-sport athletes, what sport did they play? How does it translate to their game in football? With Jud, he was a double-double front court player, 6'6" plus, and extremely coordinated mover. I'm not sure he's not the best running quarterback we had on the roster this year and last year. I've seen him take off and run, and he is faster than Cam Ward and probably faster than Carson Beck. He runs. Like, he can actually run at 6'6". Like, talk about like 20, 30-yard gains before anyone even gets to him. He has a lot of quick twitch at his size. So those are all the factors that support, that help him out. He has a smooth delivery, and he has a good arm. The negative on Jud, I would say, just like all the positives from being that kind of, what do you think about a front court basketball player? Going to have size, going to be a good athlete, explosive, whatever, rebounder. Front court players typically don't make decisions on the basketball team. Unless you're like a Luka Doncic or LeBron James, your front court players are usually the finishers. The point
rebounders,
guard. Yeah. Right. The guards are the ones holding the ball, making decisions. Joe Burrow was a guard. Cam Ward was a guard. So I think the difference from a basketball standpoint is that when you put Jud in the pocket, I'm not sure he has the vision and the feel, at least at this point of his development. And we saw Cam Ward as a 24-year-old, 23-year-old. Jud's still, 19, 20. So at this stage of his development, he's not like a senior Cam Ward as far as seeing the field. I don't think he has that background.
He's not a natural quarterback.
Right.
If that's what you're, if that's what you're
Natural
saying.
distributor, natural playmaker, just the feel for kind of this guy's open. Boom.
It looks natural when he's making the throws, but it's, the going through the progressions, reading things quickly, and then getting the ball out when he sees it.
Right.
It's that connection between the mind and the body.
Exactly. And then I think just the feel for distributing. Right. So that will come with time. Hopefully will come with time. Sometimes it never comes with time, but I think he's a redshirt freshman this year, right? Last year he redshirted. This year he's a redshirt freshman. He's the kind of guy to me that you look down the road when he's like a redshirt senior. I know that sounds like a long time from now, but Cam Ward came to us as a 5th-year starter because of the COVID year. Cam Ward literally started 5 years, which is unheard of. Just like Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix were like 5-year starters. It's like unheard of to start 5 years because you only have 4 years of eligibility. Of course, the COVID year kind of changed that for the freshman starters at the time. So Jud is way behind that in the learning curve, but Carson Beck is entering his 5th year. To say I want to see what Jud looks like in his 5th year is not an insult to Jud. I'm just being realistic. This is an experienced position. A comp I would make, I'm not saying he's going to be like this, but similar kind of skill sets is a guy that we loved, which is Tyler Shuck. So Tyler Shuck, Pete, when he played Louisville, we were watching the film to prepare for that game when Miami played Louisville. We go, this guy looks better than the quarterbacks at some of these blue chip programs. I'm looking at these top 10 teams, and I'm not sure Tyler Shuck's not better than all these guys. Tyler Shuck went on to be a 2nd-round pick, so our instincts were right on that. But Tyler Shuck didn't go into the season as a top 2nd-round pick, and that was after 5 years of college. I think he might be a 6th-year player. Mario Cristobal actually recruited Tyler Shuck to Oregon. So Jud to me is more of a let it bake kind of player. We'll see what progress he's made. He looked better in spring than he did in fall. Looked better in fall than he looked the spring prior. So he's going in the right direction. I wouldn't say he's game ready right now, but we'll see which direction he goes. I hope he sticks it out because he's very much a developmental type of player. And I say that not as an insult. That's just the reality. And others have been like that have had success.
Greatness 305 Q says, how can we say Shannon Dawson developed Cam, but none of these young guys, they don't trust any of them and they all look bad? I don't think we're sitting here saying that Shannon Dawson turned Cam Ward into the number 1 overall pick. I think Shannon Dawson would humbly probably tell you himself Cam was Cam before he got to him. But the proof is in the pudding. This is what I say about Mario too, because did Mario develop Cam Ward? No, he didn't develop him. But what did Mario and Shannon Dawson do this year with Cam that was different than the situation at Washington State? Had more talent up front, obviously. You could argue that his receivers at Washington State, you've made that argument, might have actually been better as the NFL showed. But they put him in a position to up his stock. That's all they did. It's on Cam at that point to go out there and execute. But they gave him Mario Cristobal and Coach Mirabal gave him some of the best protection up front you could ask for. Shannon Dawson, let him be him, right? I don't think that any of us have said, man, look at those schemes drawn up by Shannon Dawson. Incredible. Now, some of it is probably a more part of it than people realize. It's not all Cam, but at the same time, Shannon Dawson let Cam be Cam. And I think he needs more credit than he's gotten in that respect because he didn't meddle too much. We didn't hear, oh, look, Mario's not letting them throw the ball down. We didn't hear that as much this year, right, D?
No.
At all, which was a huge thing going into the season. So, again, are we saying that Shannon Dawson turned Cam Ward from a late-round pick to undrafted player, which that's what the NFL was telling him he was a year ago. So what changed? I think he was just put in the position to up his stock, and that's what he went out there and did.
Yeah, 100%. Also, the running game I would add, because you look at Cam Ward, the difference in Cam Ward stats from Washington State to Miami is pretty profound. He was already good, but look at the stats. Efficiency, whole different caliber. He was in the 50s in a lot of categories, offensively and individually in terms of efficiency, moves up to 1 in everything by a lot. So I think the running game was the biggest difference up front in general. Protection, running game helped Cam Ward more than any schemes. Cam Ward, by the time he got to Miami, had already played. If you're comparing Cam Ward to some of these other guys, Cam Ward came in to Miami at he started 25 games in Washington State, and he started 2 seasons at Incarnate Word. So he was already a 4-year starter before he played. That's unusual. So yeah, he didn't develop that much. By the way, on Cam Ward, Canes Cat saying, confirmed by Adam Schefter, Cam Ward's a starter. Will Levis out for the year with a shoulder. I think we kind of knew that Cam Ward would be the starter, but certainly there's no going back. I don't know who their backup is, but Cam Ward is that guy. But yeah, with Jud, let him develop. As people are saying, it sounds like a tight end. I think he could be one of those guys that if quarterback doesn't develop for him, I think he could be a very good tight end, truthfully. He needs to put on some weight, but I think, he's not that skinny, and I've seen him run. He's strong. I could see tight end if it doesn't work out at quarterback, but I would give it more time at quarterback. You just got to see how he develops. All the intangibles I heard are great. He works hard. Hopefully it happens in Miami, but it's portal era, a lot of times.
Yeah, Travis, I listen, I think we can agree there is time, but at the same time, at the same point, from the player's point of view, if it's like D just said, it's portal era, so we'll see what transpires throughout the year. But I think there's still something to him, man. I really do.
2 great comments. Matthew Owen saying Buck Ortega, not a bad comp by Matthew Owen. Buck Ortega was a really athletic, toolsy quarterback during that early 2000s era. Didn't develop as a quarterback, ended up moving to tight end, and he actually played multiple seasons in the NFL as a quarterback and special teams player. His teammate, Sean Taylor, in high school, Drex is saying that Dorsey got picked off by Sean Taylor for when he was on the 49ers, teammate of Buck Ortega. And Greatness asking, do you think we don't win the ACC this year? We end up playing the young quarterbacks next year. I mean, I hope we win the ACC. I said, if I had to bet, I'm picking portal for the reasons I've said earlier. What do you say, Pete?
I agree, and I think if they don't win the ACC this year, then it hammers the point home even more that they go get another portal QB. I don't think that if they don't do what they expect this year, I think they'll go swinging once again. I think they're definitely not going to sit around at that point.
Nope. All right. So last one on the list, Luke Nickel. Right. So Luke Nickel, 4-star quarterback out of Milton, Georgia, or Milton High School, Alpharetta, Georgia, Atlanta area. Number 2 team in the country last year. He's somebody who, when he committed, was a 3-star. He came down here and played Western, which is a South Florida school. Shout out to Coach Macho, who's the defensive coordinator, poster on the Canes Inside message boards. And he struggled in that game. I think that's fair to say. Just arm strength wise, just didn't look the part. That led to him being a 3-star for most of the process, at least on 247. Has an incredible senior year. Number 2 team in the country. Dominant. I think he was like 22 for 23 in the state championship game. I mean, elite. Ends up being a 4-star player. Also finished in the 11 for the Elite 11. So he's an actual legit Elite 11 quarterback, meaning top 11 finisher at the Elite 11 event. Comes here in spring. No Carson Beck. So he starts off playing a lot of 3rd team, and he struggled at times. But it was the kind of I liked what I saw. Now, here's the Luke Nickel experience in spring. Pete, you were out there as well. When you see him in the warm-up line, you're talking about, he doesn't look like Jud Anderson. He doesn't look
I'll be right back to you. I got to.
Yep. He doesn't look like Jud Anderson. He doesn't look like Emory Williams. Size-wise, a much different picture, right? So he looks small when he's in the warm-up line, because he is not as tall as a Jud Anderson is 6'6". Emory Williams is a heavy 6'5", 6'4". So you're talking about just bigger players kind of compared to him. So first impression, you're saying he's smaller. He's really not that small. He's 6'1", 200 plus pounds. But compared to those big, huge quarterbacks, Carson Beck probably put him in that same category. He looks small, but he's not that small. And then you see him with the 3rd team, and talk about walk-on receivers, walk-on running backs, walk-on offensive linemen, and a lot of the defensive players were scholarship players rotating in. So a lot of times you had receivers that can't get open the same way. Receivers aren't going to catch the ball the same way. Protection is not going to be there. He threw a ton of interceptions, missed throws. I mean, he was all over the place early. But I remember thinking, he doesn't have it around him, the talent, and he's trying to throw. Some guys in that situation, they'll crumble up and get sacked a ton because they don't have the protection. Then guys aren't open, and they'll just kind of shell up and get sacked. What Luke Nickel did, which was different, was he'd escape. He tried to make plays, sort of a natural pocket feel. He could step up. He can get out of the pocket. Not a runner, but very, very instinctive in the pocket. He feels it. And then he was throwing it down the field, man. So I think when you talk about just the natural instincts at the position, he has it. As the spring went on, he got more snaps with the second team, got more snaps with the first team, made more plays. You saw him in the spring game hitting Malachi Tony deep. Still threw picks, but they weren't picks from being tentative. They were picks from being aggressive. He was trying to do things he did in high school. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but he was testing his limits. So I am a Luke Nickel fan after spring. I think he has the right mindset. I think he's got great instincts in the pocket. He sees the field. He's aggressive. He makes plays. He has the playmaking mentality. I think his size and arm strength are fine for the college level, more than fine. So I'm bullish on Luke Nickel, but it's going to take some time.
Yeah, I quite frankly was getting pretty tough reports on him when he first got here, D, and really, really improved as it came along. And I missed the part you just said, but the adjustment to like the speed of the game and trying to fit balls in to spaces that weren't necessarily there was an adjustment for him. Now it was his first, few months on campus there, and it was a big adjustment. Obviously, I don't know that we're looking at a guy who has like freakish athletic ability, but as you've said, you've compared him to Tim Tebow, man. And Jalen Hurts. So I'm not going to take anything away from his ability to. Yeah, he's not a statue, right? So he's not a stiff guy in the pocket. He can move a little bit, and I think the willingness for him to push the ball downfield is that's a trait that not every quarterback has. Now, continuing to connect at a high rate is going to be the goal there, but that is something that I don't know that Emory. It's like not in Emory's DNA to like push the ball downfield, right? So that's something that I would give Luke a heads up, a notch on there, but. Yeah, I still think there's going to be some development there.
Yeah, and P was tongue-in-cheek slightly about the Tim Tebow, Jalen Hurts. I was a joke. I mean, they ran the same plays for him in high school. He's not that kind of athlete, but I would compare him more like a Sam Howell. That's, to me, the best physical comp. I think Sam Howell might have a little more juice in his arm, NFL quarterback, but Nickel's similar build, similar athleticism, similar kind of DNA playmaking. William Smith says, the last 10 national championship quarterbacks were from high school. NFL success means nothing for natties. I mean, is that right? The last quarterback was Will Howard. I mean, he was a transfer. Stetson Bennett was a transfer. I don't think I have to go back and look at who the national championships were, but I wouldn't say that's the case. And also, the portal's new in terms of like what we're talking about. Like, it's a new thing. Certainly the two best quarterbacks last year, I would say. I mean, the guy that won the Heisman was Jaden Daniels before Cam Ward.
Joe Burrow was a
transfer. Yeah, I'm just looking at the list here. Joe Burrow was a transfer. So
Jalen Hurts.
I know Alabama won with a transfer quarterback at one time, Coker, and that was back in the day. But yeah, I mean, Cam Newton was a transfer.
Went to Oklahoma. I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah,
Cam Newton was a transfer. He was pretty good. Right. And this is like before the transfer portal era really was cooking. I think now you'll see portal quarterbacks. I mean, look at right now, Julian Sane, he's even a transfer. You think it was a high school quarterback. He's actually a transfer. He transferred from Alabama. So, we'll see on that, but I think you got to follow trends. George Cherry saying, who's the next top quarterback in South Florida today? Get him by all means necessary. Who was the last South Florida quarterback who went to Miami? I think Stephen Morris was the last one who started. But I bad news, George. The top quarterback in South Florida is actually the top quarterback in the country, which is Diabell. He's going to Texas. So that one hurts. I think that one, we haven't talked about it a lot because it was so early, but man, I'm a big Diabell fan, having seen him. I know you saw him as well, Pete, and like him. I think he's going to be a great one. And then, think of obviously Lamar Jackson, Bridgewater, Geno Smith back in the day, Jacoby Brissett, but even recently, Fernando Mendoza, CJ Bailey, I think is going to be a really good player. We got to get, there's one more trend we got to reverse, and Diabell, unfortunately, I think is going to be a good one for Texas.
Yeah, I agree with that. He's growing on me for sure. I will say I talked to someone yesterday who was connected to someone with a coaching staff that played against Heritage in the playoffs, and they said, man, we had a way better chance of beating them with Diabell at quarterback than we did with Malachi Tony. They had this coach said they had no chance once they saw it was going to be Malachi starting in that game. So Just an interesting thing there.
Yeah, well, we should add Malachi Tony to the quarterback mix, man. I saw him and Darian Coleman go head-to-head in the state championship game, and I mean, Malachi Tony he looked like Cam Ward. He didn't even run. He was like 20. He was like 19 or 20 or something at one point, and he wasn't even running. He'd move around a little, but he was throwing the ball, man. Just a special talent there. All right, real quick before we switch gears to basketball, Pete, my man Coach Jenko, he went to Islas Canarias after his game. Hopefully they won at Columbus. He said, I got the palomilla steak, best I've ever had. Best cafecito in Florida, made the right way. Guava pastelito is elite, and the best croquetas you will ever have. Definitely the number one spot for Cuban food to go. That's from Coach Jenko. Appreciate you. And, I mean, he's right, man. Islas Canarias Express, number one Cuban restaurant on the planet, right there in the Dayland Mall Dining Pavilion, although I believe Coach Jenko went to the classic location in Miami. Either one, man, you're in good hands. 7 different types of croquetas. You talk about pig. If you're a fan of pork, there's nowhere better. You mentioned the steak with the palomilla steak right there. They got all kinds of steak, handhelds like sandwiches, Cuban sandwich, all medianoche, any kind of sandwich you want. They got that to go. I mean, the menu is extensive, comprehensive. Not only do they have all the Cuban classics, they got Venezuelan stuff like tequeños. They got like vegan options. I mean, they got everything in the world, plus all the different beverages, Cuban style. Listen to Coach Jenko, Islas Canarias, the number one Cuban spot on the planet.
Go ahead.
All right, Pete, let's talk about Ernest, your boy.
Yeah, so I had, if you guys have seen over the weekend, released interviews with Malik Renew and Trey Donaldson, 2 of the new transfers from Miami. Got a lot of good feedback on those. The Trey Donaldson interview was a good one, man. Guy who has a chip on his shoulder, a lot of confidence in himself and what this team could do for this year. And Ernest Ude is someone, D. I've been telling you behind the scenes now for a couple of weeks that there's a lot of good buzz on this guy. Former 5-star recruit, you mentioned it, former McDonald's All-American, played a bit as a freshman at Kansas, then went to TCU, played there for a couple of years. And this is a guy who, body type wise, man, freak of an athlete, really agile, good feet for his size, more of a defensive player at this point. He's a rim runner and a guy who's a lob, catches lobs. But I think he's going to be one of the hearts and souls of this Miami team. And sheer size, as we understand, look, Lynn Kidd was a 7-footer last year. I think you're getting a different type of athlete with Ernest Ude and a different sort of intensity that he's bringing to the floor.
Physicality too.
Physicality. I mean, look, it's going to be him and Malik Renew starting as the 4 and the 5. Renew is maybe 3 inches taller than what Norchad Omier was, who was Miami's starting 5 a couple years ago. And then Ernest Ude is 6'11", with, again, a really nice motor defensively, and I think more in the tank as an offensive player than maybe we've seen here. So going to play this interview now, and then we're going to come back on after to do the 07 class review. So, or that's what we're doing, right, D?
Yep, let's do it. Yep.
All right, so I'm going to pull this up now. And again, guys, as always, basketball content brought to you by Aries Law. Check out AriesLawPA.com for your estate planning needs. Wills, trusts, probate law, Aries Law, AriesLawPA.com. So here is the interview with Ernest Udeh Jr. All right, joining me now on the CanesInSight podcast, new Miami center, Ernest Udeh Jr., coming over from TCU, started his career at Kansas, and now he's the big man for the Canes. Ernest, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Doing well, man. Wanted to kind of introduce you a bit to the fan base here at Miami, get to know you a little bit, your journey to the U now. But the decision, let's just get right into that. First off, right away. I've asked the other guys I've talked to today, what was kind of the plan or vision that Coach Lucas and his staff put in place for you, or kind of sold you on, that made you say, look, this is where I need to take my next step at?
Just obviously going into the portal my second time around, I honestly told myself I wanted to come home, play as close as I can to home. Tell people basketball is giving me the opportunity to like play anywhere and everywhere. You feel me? So just going into that decision, I told myself like I wanted to come to Florida, come back home. Jay got the job. He recruited me when he was at Duke, when I was my first time around going into the portal. And just knowing him as a person and just his values and what he stands for, I knew what he had laid out for me was going to be what it was. Integrity, that's a big part in this sport and in this business, if you want to keep it a buck, So I just knew and trusted everything that he was saying to me and just knew that it was the right decision.
I've asked the other Florida boys, that's what we're kind of calling it a little bit, right? Because that's what it is about. Obviously, you knew each other going into it. So what were those conversations like behind closed doors before? Because you guys it all kind of happened at the same time, which was, I'm guessing, planned. But talk about those conversations and how excited you guys were to team up.
Like I said, I wanted to come home. I got word that Malik transferred here and, when he committed. And honestly, when he came here, I told myself, like, that was definitely another key aspect of why I really made my decision. Playing against him over the years, knowing him over the years, knowing the type of player he is, knowing the type of guy he is off the court. Chemistry is huge in the sport. And, it was a no-brainer. Trey, hit me up on the same type of timing. What's the word? And, just playing against him. Well, when we played him, I wasn't available. But like I said, knew him off the court, knew him for a little minute. So, again, from that chemistry standpoint, we all knew what it was. We all knew that we care about this game and what each other's going to bring to it. So it was no-brainer. Your
game, it seems like you're obviously defensively, you're very willing to play that side of the ball, which in today's era, not all big men like to do that, man. You see Shaq get on the TV. So where does that come from? Understanding that you may not touch the ball every single time you come down the floor, but you got to bring it every time defensively.
I'll be honest with you, when I first started playing basketball, defense was my strong suit. I was always that energetic kid. Mind you, I've always been tall, but I've been able to always move well with my body. People see me dancing and everything, having that coordination. And I tell people all the time it correlates, even when I was in middle school, like I said, when I was younger, I was always that guy on the team, loving to play defense. If coach says we have a whole defensive day, I'm kind of pumped for it. I love getting a stop, love looking across the other guys and like, dude, you can't get a buck, you can't score, like, go the other way, you feel me? Like, you're not getting it here, you feel me? So I feel like I gravitate towards that and have a specific joy for that. And it definitely, that comes into play too with, you talk about playing defense, just certain things that you can't really teach. Defense is very instinctive. You got to be able to react, be quick on your feet, knowing how to guard the ball in certain sets and make certain reads on the other side of the ball. And, I understand that I excel with that.
And then your next step, what would you say that would be? What have you kind of been focusing on this off season, and how do you see yourself factoring in, within the flow of the offense?
Especially, making myself a threat on offense. That's something that's really been preached to me.
In the clip,
right. I'm always, whenever I work out, I'm working on different shots and different spots, and it's not really more so just about making it just having that aggressiveness to go and take the shot. That's been a big thing my entire career. Because, like you just mentioned, just defense has always been something that, I could fall back on, that I'm really very comfortable and understand that's something I do crazy well, more than other guys. But like you say, taking the next step is just being more aggressively on the offensive side of the ball.
We saw the mic'd up. The Canes fans, go check it out on the Canes Hoops page. You seem to keep it loose. Like that's kind of your leadership style a little bit. So talk about why you think that's important. And again, I've asked these other guys about how the team's coming together, because it can't just be one guy. It's be a collective effort. So talk about how you think that helps the group kind of gel.
At TCU, again, I was still in that same leadership role. I was kind of the guy that everyone on the team, everyone on the staff, could talk to, get along with. I just understand that, life is very special. Life is important. The decisions you make, the people you meet, the choices, like I said, you make. And, like you said, me keeping it loose, keeping it fun, because I never try to be too serious. At the end of the day, I understand what it is, what we're trying to do. But, basketball is a very mental game. And, I even see it in myself. And sometimes, I work on it. If I'm working out, I'm missing shots, I miss two in a row. It's like I'm always focusing on that mental aspect to not get in that slump mentally. Keep thinking next shot, next play, even on the court, like I said. So, that's kind of what I really target at. Whenever, like you said, I'm leading or, talking to the guys, just keeping it lighthearted, understanding that, the last shot that you took doesn't matter, make or miss. It's about the next shot you're about to take. So
I've asked the other guys this, the Florida connection, just your family being able to come see you, because you were at Kansas and TCU. That's not you're being from Orlando. That's not an easy trip necessarily. Now they can hop in the car and they're a few hours away. What's that like for you?
I'm being so honest with you, man. When I committed, like anyone who knows me, everyone who's around me, just I've had a smile on my face even till now. Talking about it all the time. Like it's a couple hours away. I mean, for me, understanding how long I've played this game and the time that I've spent away from my family in certain intervals, like just being able to on a weekend drive 3 hours to go see them. It's a different feeling. Hop on the train, that's two. And it really takes a big mental portion off to where like I'm at peace. There's serenity in a sense to where I know, like, to me, my family's next door. And that it just really keeps me at peace for a lot of things.
The way to build abs is not crunches, not 4-minute planks, and definitely not mountain climbers. There's an actually easy.
I've asked these other guys about the young players coming up, because there's a lot of vets, but a lot of guys who are new to this level of college basketball. What's kind of been your biggest message to them? And look, it may not be like something you tell them, but just kind of how you try to lead.
Right. First thing I can definitely say, with the guys that are younger, the freshmen, I really can't see any differences as far as on the court. When we get on the court, all I see is men out there. When you talk about JJ, you talk about Shell, BA, for example, like all these guys, not a single one of them that I'm gonna look at them and be like, okay, you're a freshman. So this, again, just from that experience factor of just being in college, may be the only aspect. But, when they're on the court, I expect them to make the same shot that Trey's going to take, make the same read defensively that I would make. As far as everything has been so far in practices and working out, they're really way far ahead than any freshman that I've really played a part with or even been around, So I'm really happy that that's the type of team that we have here, from a maturity standpoint, of course.
Weight room wise, what has it been like in there? Because you see, I mean, the mic'd up stuff, you see you guys are an intense atmosphere in there. What have the workouts been like, with Coach Zoner and you personally? Have you seen, like, I mean, this is my first time. It looks like you maybe leaned up a little
for sure.
from last year. So talk about that physical progress.
The workout's been intense, Z-hold is to a standard. Like I said, they've been nothing short of that. Each and every day when we're getting in there, getting after it, if he sees us slacking a little bit, he's going to get on us for sure. And, being an older guy and being around this game as long as I've been, you expect that. That's the higher standard that you want to be around. That's why you come to a type of program this is led by Jay and everything. Like, that's what you want. I don't want to be here wasting my time, whether it be on the court, off the court, in the weight room, nutrition, everything involved. You don't want to be feeling like you're wasting your time or you're not making any progress, and something that you've given basically your entire life to, making the sacrifices that you make for you to come up short or to, not get as much out of it as you should.
Now, just kind of wrapping things up here, the other members of the coaching staff, Coach Lucas, we've talked a lot about him, but it's a great group. It seems like a nice combination of some young guys who've been around the block and seen just about everything you can see in this game. So that had to have been, even though you didn't officially, a lot of these guys weren't officially hired, but you had to have an idea of who was joining on board. How big of your decision, how big a part of your decision was that?
I really believe in the philosophy of anything that I can ask that head coach, I should be able to ask anybody on the staff, from CY to LJ, EP, he recruited me coming out of high school when he was over there in Florida, man. And, like I said, it really plays a role. It really gives you an understanding of the type of program and the team that you're going to be a part of. When you can talk to someone other than the head coach and still get some of that sort of that same knowledge and respect that they're going to give you, and the same standard that they're going to hold you to, even though they're not the head coach with all the glamour and everything, but you respect them as well, and I feel like that's a very key component to any championship team.
Both Malik and Trey have talked about a couple of the young guys, Dante and Shelton, who have been here already. I mean, talk about them and talk about the other guys who have gotten here and how they've approached the game already and approached the work.
Like I said, really differences wise, you couldn't even tell. If we were to hop in a 5-on-5 game right now, you really wouldn't be able to tell. There's really not much disparities in that area at all. Shedding some light on True. True is also another piece of this program. He's going to be really good for us. We expect a lot out of him, as we do everybody else on the team. you know, whether it be, like I said, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, coaches putting us in different situations, different spots, scenarios. It's nothing that we all shouldn't be prepared for, you know, because we understand what's to come when we get into August, October, you know, September, finally start playing. You know, someone's in foul trouble, you have to make adjustments. Those are the type of things that you drill on, you practice. So when it comes game time, you know how to approach it and handle it. You know, I feel like coach is doing a very exceptional job at doing that. And I don't think there's a single thing that we're not going to be prepared for.
Ernest Ude, we're very excited to see
Yes,
you this season at Miami. Canes fans, we'll see him at the Watt this year.
Let's do it. Sir.
All right. So there you have it. Ernest Ude Jr., Miami center. A lot of good buzz about this guy, man. Really good energy in the building from people I've spoken to. Very coachable, listens, and sets a good example. He's talking about the young guys a lot there. I can't say, D, I was around the team much at this point of the year last year. I got around them on that media day, and listen, it's not that I think that this team is like, oh, they're already perfectly gelled. Like, there's still a lot of guys there's still a few guys who need to get to campus. There's still maybe another addition to the roster. But it seems like the fact that they've all mentioned how they knew each other from high school, playing with each other, AAU, playing against each other in high school. There was a familiarity that there wasn't necessarily, like last year. You're bringing in Brandon Johnson from Carolina, from East Carolina, but he's from the Carolinas. You're bringing in a Lynn kid who played at Virginia Tech and Clemson, but none of these guys really knew each other, right? Jaleel Bethea was a huge recruit, but there wasn't many ties to any of the guys on the team here. Dante Allen, who's a top 40 recruit in the country, by the way, I think has a chance to be one of the better players on Miami's team this year, could fill a huge scoring void for this team. Great reviews about him early, but that's a guy that not only was a big time recruit, but he knows even the older guys. He was in the same AAU program with them. So I think that's going to help the team kind of get off to a better start than what they did last year when they had so many guys trying to play together for the first time. And I'm getting that sense, man. There's good vibes in the building in terms of the team aspect of it.
Yeah, the players know each other. The coaches know the players, right? Because there's a lot of local coaches as well. That's kind of how a lot of these players came into focus, right? Was because there was a tie to the staff or something like that. The weight room, you heard him talk about that, or you asked him about it. You guys talked about it. That to me is a huge difference. You think Virginia, right? I know Virginia's not Virginia right now, but the Virginia we remember in the ACC. You see similar body types. You see maybe similar lack of offensive firepower, at least from the perimeter. But they're going to be a lot of close games, and they're going to beat a lot of teams up. They're going to be hard to play. So that, to me, those are my big takeaways from all these interviews. On top of the fact that, these guys they seem easy to talk to. They seem sharp. So all that stuff kind of checks out just from watching your interviews. I know you've done a few of these. And this guy, with Dante Allen, maybe it's just because they kind of look somewhat similar. But, I'm not saying he's going to be this good. I'm just saying the college version of, maybe like a Deron Williams.
Dude, he's big, man. And he was there the other day. There were some of the young guys, John LeBoy, Jordan Key, who transferred from Georgia. A lot of these guys were there kind of on the other side of the camera. They were messing around with them on the other side. But Dante, that's a big boy, man. That's a big guard, as they say in today's game. He's a combo guard, can handle the ball, better shooter, I think, than people realize. And getting downhill, he is a lot to deal with. You see, I mean, this is a young freshman here. I think when he continues to develop physically, you look at his size already as a guard. He's coming in ready to play. State champ at Riviera, has played in big time games, nationally ranked, televised sort of games. He's going to be ready to go right away.
Remember, his dad was an NBA big man, Malik Allen, a big man, like heavy. He wasn't just like a tall guy. He was a tall and heavy big man coach now in the NBA. Some people think he's the best in the business for the Miami Heat. So that's his roots, right? Is being a big man. Obviously, he's a guard, but he has that physical mentality and that frame where maybe he does grow. I mean, he's already pretty big, but he doesn't look that old when you look at him. It's not like he looks like a Bryson Wright, who we saw in the 7-on-7 championships at 14, he looks like he's about 22. This guy still kind of looks young, so he might even get it bigger just from a size standpoint. Obviously, the handle and stuff and the IQ of a guard is all there. So I'm excited about him, excited about this team. I think it's going to be maybe an uglier brand of basketball from just a offensive standpoint, but certainly a more effective style that's going to get you in a lot more close games and get you a lot more wins this year.
Yeah, they're gonna clamp some teams down. You're gonna need sparks. You're gonna need guys like Dante Allen to come up with an 18-point game, maybe out of nowhere. A true Washington, who we didn't talk about. That's one of the things that I caught too with Ude. You saw some of the answers he gave. I asked him one question about his defensive mentality, and he went on a 1.5 minute. Very thoughtful answer, and someone said he sounded like a safety the way he talked about defense, but that's why he's so valuable. He's going to be able, he sees the whole floor from back there and can get everything set up in front of him. But you saw how he mentioned, he says, let's not forget about True. She's talking about True Washington at the end, because I asked about some of the new guys, but he himself brought him up, right? So you can tell that he's very aware of everything. He didn't want to leave anyone out there when we were talking about the team. And I think just like you saw with Trey Donaldson, what he's going to bring in terms of that like chip on his shoulder. I think Trey's going to really be like the vocal leader of this team, but Ude in a sense will too. Malik probably he's a little quieter than these guys, but his production at Indiana was tremendous. And coming in here as a guy who is going to be very important to Miami's offense, because we know he can score inside, but there's a belief that they can help him extend his range a little bit, gain some confidence, and be able to take people off the dribble from the perimeter and do a little bit more with his offensive game here this season.
Yeah, we'll be covering basketball like nobody else. Pete leading the charge, Ariz LaPierre leading the charge, and it's going to be a lot of fun, man, seeing these guys develop and watching them up close. You're going to have more basketball coverage from CanesInSight than you've ever had, and that pretty much anyone's ever had. We're going to be plugged in, and this is just to start these interviews. Trey Donaldson, a lot of people love that interview as well. So a lot of good stuff. You have more in the pipe, right? Pipeline for these.
Yeah. So right now, those were the three that I did last week, just kind of starting with, and these guys are expected to be the leaders, right? They're all veterans coming from big programs who have had success both personally and as team players. So I would expect them to be the ones talking the most right now. We'll hopefully I can get a Shelton Henderson soon, a Dante Allen soon, stuff like that. And True Washington, but yeah, I will be continuing you'll be getting more content. And shout out to the Canes Hoops social media team. I know they've been putting in a big effort to produce more content and get us more as fans connected to the team, because Jay understands how important that is now. The way he's recruited. I know Jay, Lucas, and Coach CY, Charlton Young were out in LA last week. There was a big Adidas event tournament going on for AAU, and they were out there to see point guard Darron Rippey, I believe his name is, number 2 point guard in the country, Miami, Darron Rippey from Blair Academy, a program that Miami's actually gotten a couple guys out of in the past in New Jersey. And he's a top 20 player nationally, number 2 point guard in the country. Miami's made his top 10, but from the early, just reading the tea leaves right now, it seems like this is a guy that Jay Lucas as a point guard is making an early run at, and wouldn't be surprised to see Miami stay around there in that recruitment.
Yep, it's going to be fun to follow Miami recruiting now with Jay Lucas. I saw that Tristan preaches a story on Gaskins, his brother. Yeah, who's like a 5-star for 2029. Of course, Gaskins himself,
Caleb Gaskins,
from Columbus. He'll be a 5-star player next year. So
the early buzz on Caleb Gaskins, real quick before we go onto the 07 class review, just as a player, and you know how it is. It's a little bit easier to project NBA pro body types when it comes to basketball and baseball, even compared to football, because there's such a more physical aspect to it. But the early word on Caleb Gaskins is that's an NBA player all the way. That's a first round pick all the way. And Miami is in a good spot right now. So we'll see what happens.
Fun to watch that one. Brandon's asking, now can we talk baseball? I can tell you, Brandon, number one, we're going to have a full baseball episode with Sebastian Font, a long one. I just kind of wanted to let some dust settle there, but we'll be doing a long baseball episode with Sebastian Font, brought to you by Salas, Reed, and Cox this week. And then also, right after I'm done with this, I'm going over to this big studio to record a big league show with former MLB executive Adrian Lorenzo. Shout out to Mark. He knows the studio. With former MLB executive Adrian Lorenzo. It's a show we do talking about MLB, college, high school, the draft, in this case, the draft, the trade deadline, break down the Toronto Blue Jays in depth, a lot of stuff, especially the trade deadline we'll be talking about today with someone who's been in those rooms, been in the war room. It will be live, Brandon, with Adrian Lorenzo. I think that will be around, let's say 12:30. I think we're looking at right now. And one of our guests is going to be another Marlins executive, which is my man, David Oxfeld. So it'll be a fun episode. Talk about the business of baseball as we gear up for potentially the lockout here in a couple of years. Hopefully not, but a lot of things changing business-wise. So we'll talk about all that stuff. Brian saying, what's up, fellas? I'm 85 minutes late. Gonna have to replay this pod. Go Canes. Listen, we're going long today. 1 hour, 26 minutes, and we still got some time to go. We're going longer and longer. See how this goes. We'll break up the episodes into little segments so you guys can watch whatever you want to watch. I'm going to watch the whole 2-hour show. If you want to watch, hour and a half, hour, 45 minute, 2-hour show, you can. So we'll see. We'll experiment with different things here. But yeah, Pete, fired up. Oh, before we get into the,
let's get into the 07 class review.
Before we get in there, let's talk about real quick the Miami Hurricane team store. This is, you're getting ready for the season, guys. You're going to get your clothes to go to the games, to watch the games, whatever it is. Miami Hurricane team store, MiamiHTS.com, or you go to the store right across the street from the University of Miami. Use promo code INSIGHT20. You get 20% off your first item. Look at this one, Pete, for you. Windcraft golf balls.
There you go.
So MiamiHTS.com or in store, just say INSIGHT20, Canes Insight. If you're in store, they got the button for you right there. You get 20% off your first item. But you got to load up for the season. This is the time. Your kid's going back to school. Get them some back to school gear. Load up. It's the time of the year. MiamiHTS.com or the store right across the street from the University of Miami. Promo code INSIGHT20. All right. Now we're ready. Let's go.
All right. So I'm pulling up the article here on Canes Insight, reviewing the class as a class of 07.
Yeah. So this is a series that we've been doing, which is just kind of going back from all the Coker classes, the Shannon classes, the Golden classes, the Rick classes, all the way through the Diaz classes to compare, kind of see, now that we've had time to reflect, we've seen how these careers of some of these players have ended up, right? We've got time. We go through these classes. They're like the most important thing in the world when you're still recruiting, and then you move on to the next class. Now that these classes have really kind of settled, you know how they played at UM, you know how they played at the next level if they got there, you know how things turned out. So I want to just go back now with the benefit of hindsight and look at these classes and see what we can learn from this exercise. So we've gone through the Coker classes. We saw the dramatic drop-off in talent. We saw that the classes were top-heavy at first. They'd have a Pro Bowler up top, and then no one even helped at all. Eventually, there wasn't even a top, right? So the Coker classes really dropped off. Now we are shifting gears to the Shannon era. And I got to say, I have a more appreciation for Shannon's talent acquisition when I did this exercise, especially compared to Coker, which preceded it. Still wasn't perfect. And of course, there were a lot of coaching issues. But I think Shannon, when you do this, again, I have more of an appreciation for him. So this was the transition class. Coker got fired in November. Shannon took over. And Coker left Shannon with nothing, right? So he basically started from scratch, middle of the recruiting process. He was the DC, so he had some relationships, but this was a transition class. Those are hard. I look at the 4-year winning percentage, a stat I do for every single class, which is you take the class's 4-year winning percentage and project it 4 years. So let's say it's the class of 03, 04, 05, 06. You look at the Miami Hurricane seasons there to calculate the winning percentage. Good way to just kind of see how a class can maybe impact the future. This is the first year, this class, where the winning percentage did not drop. It had been dropping 10%, 10%, 5% since the beginning of the Coker era, taken over for Butch Davis. It was 88% when Coker took over, dropped all the way to 55%. So Coker gutted what happened. But Shannon stopped the bleeding. Zero change here with this class. Smaller class, 19 enrollees, but yet 6 NFL players, 303 NFL games between those guys, and 4 day 2 picks, second, third round. And you go through the list. I think this really was a good job by Randy Shannon to stop the bleeding. You had Allan Bailey from Sapelo Island. P, were you following recruiting already at this time?
Yeah, I said on a last week's show that 08 was like the first full year I was like into it. I was on message boards, like reading. It was Kane Sport was what I was reading. But 07 was, I definitely remember a lot of bits and pieces of this class. I remember Allen, obviously Sapelo Island, the stories of how they had to go, recruit him pretty much, and how, many people lived, or little people lived on the island, and their way of life. And then I always remember everyone saying about Robert Marve, Mr. Football, that he broke all of Tebow's records, right? That's what I heard about him a lot. And then Greg Cooper was one of the first recruitments I remember following, as well, as he was like the number one, what they call it, all-purpose back is what they had them ranked as at the time. So I remember, just being a huge fan of his highlights, and of course at Miami as well.
A good memory, man. So with Allan Bailey, what was interesting about that recruitment, he's from Sapelo Island. So this is like an island off of Georgia where really it was the contact with the mainland was limited. You had to get there by boat. So
ferry, yeah.
Similar to the Geechee subculture in South Carolina, where a lot of African traditions are maintained because the isolation for so many years from mainland United States. So it's a unique culture there. He talked about eating raccoons and stuff when he was getting recruited. Clint Hurt did a really nice job, who's now defensive coordinator. Where's Clint Hurt, the defensive coordinator?
Is it he's Seahawks? Is he still with the Seahawks? I think he is.
Is he a D-line coach?
No. Yes, he was the D coordinator with the Seahawks, but he's the guy who's basically Jalen Carter's. He reins him in for the Eagles. Yeah, well, he has a great job with the Eagles right now. He paid very well to coach that room.
Well, he did a great job recruiting Allan Bailey, again, from an area where you would normally think SEC. This guy was a linebacker in high school, starts off as a linebacker in Miami, eventually moves down from DN, then ultimately D-tackle. Great player. Played 133 NFL games, so made a lot of money in the pros. When you look at those, that's why I use his NFL games marker, because Pete, you know how ruthless this talent evaluation process is in the pros, that like just to get on the field, you have to check a lot of boxes, right? There's a lot of opportunities to get cut. So I like to see, who is able to get through that process and get on the field. So that's why Allan Bailey, 133 games, big time player. Doug Wiggins was the Dade County Player of the Year, quarterback corner out of, or quarterback safety out of North Miami Beach. We had just lost the year before, a couple years before, EJ Biggers, who was basically like same as Doug Wiggins. He was a quarterback athlete, goes to Western Michigan, ends up being a starting NFL corner. We're like, all right, we missed out on the Dade County Player of the Year with Biggers. Now we're not going to miss it with Wiggins. Wiggins wasn't as fast as Biggers, didn't make it. Robert Marve, Brian with a comment here. I talked with Robert Marve at the 07 spring game, got a bad vibe immediately, and you were in trouble. Marve, like you said, Pete, broke all the records in Tampa. Tim Tebow's records for Tampa plant, was committed to Ole Miss, opened up recruitment, so Miami was able to slide in. It seemed like a perfect marriage. Then right away, he gets in a car accident with Jermaine McKenzie and a couple other guys before he enrolls. He's out for the year, red shirts. During his red shirt year, or at least in the summer after his red shirt year, he punches a window trying to get away from cops. It wasn't like a major crime, but when your quarterback is breaking his hand trying to get away from cops, it's like, okay, now we got a problem. So with Marve, I say he started the tradition of quarterbacks getting in trouble at Miami. You had Marve, Cannon Smith, I believe, had some issues. Ja'Cory Harris was clean, but he got suspended a game for the Shapiro thing. Kevin Olson was a disaster. I guess Kevin Olson. Yeah. So Kevin Olson was after this. So Kevin Olson got extremely serious charges against him. He's cleaned up his life. Apparently he's working with his brother in the broadcast, but I mean, that was a nasty situation with him. Jaron Williams, we know about his issues. Cade Weldon got suspended. N'Kosi Perry got suspended. I mean, these are quarterbacks, Pete. So the fact that so many quarterbacks got in trouble I think when you look at that in retrospect, you say, of all the issues we can point to as to why Miami declined, put that one close to the top, because when your quarterback's getting suspended, your culture is cooked. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Lee Chambers, highly rated player at Mississippi, good speed, probably too small, I think was the issue there.
32? He wore number 32?
Yeah, there we go. He was just, the size was an issue there. Greg Cooper, you mentioned, great player for Miami. Horrible injury on the turf in Orlando, the old Citrus Bowl. That's since been fixed, but really ruined his career. And that's one of the worst injuries, I think, as a UM fan, seeing his career go on that stupid field. Harlan Gunn, big-time power player from Nebraska, ended up playing a few games in the NFL. Chris Perry never made it. Damian Barry, good short yardage back out of Belglade, practice squad player for Baltimore when they won the championship. Jermaine McKenzie, same as Chambers, never had the size, physical strength. Orlando Franklin, probably the best player, I think, from this class. Maybe you say Allan Bailey, but Orlando Franklin was a monster. A Jamaican, Canadian, moved to South Florida, signed with the Canes, started right away or played right away, ended up starting in the NFL, second-round pick. And then DVD, a speedster from Miami Monsignor Pace High School, length, speed. The weight was the question with him, but ultimately got drafted in the third round after tearing up the combine. Any memories on those guys?
Yeah. I mean, DVD was always the speed. It was always skinny, but speed. And Orlando Franklin now should mention that he's calling games for ESPN as well. I think he called, what game did he call this year that Miami fans actually weren't too happy with him because he had said something about Cam Ward after the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, Damian Barry, we brought him up the other day. He was actually, it's funny because he's one of those guys that when you look back on these classes, like there's no cliff notes about him here, but he had a good career at Miami. Like it turned into a really solid contributor at the time. And I kind of want to go back and look at, after you're done with all this, like how many of these guys maybe didn't make it to the NFL, but were valuable players for Miami still.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up. So the answer is not that many, which is one of the reasons why I focus so much on those NFL guys. But I would say when you talk about this class, you had more than usual, right? So you had Damian Barry was a productive player. Greg Cooper was an extremely productive player. Tyler Horn down the road, when you get down this list, who was like a no-star when Jeff Stoutland found him. He was second team all ACC. So there were a few of those guys.
I think we had Tyler Horn. We had Tyler Horn on the show years ago a few times. He was a great guest. Maybe we should try to find him, see if he still wants to.
Does he write children's books? Is that him?
Yeah.
Yeah. He writes some good children's books about being a Cane. I got to get one of those now that I got my kids. Although they might be too old now. Now Eli's already reading like Athlon Sports and all the other ones. We go up a little bit, Pete. So rolling up now. Here are the 3-star players. Sean Bree McNeil out of Dallas, Texas. Speedster.
Transfer to SMU. Right?
Transfer to SMU. Hankerson, talk about probably the best evaluation in this class. 3-star player out of St. Thomas, a heavily scouted school, but you still get him as a 3-star. Remember the story in this class was Deontay Thompson, right? Hankerson really ended up being better than Deontay Thompson. 41 NFL games, would have had more if he didn't get hurt. 3rd-round pick, set all kinds of records at Miami his senior year. And then also after his injury, shifted more to the coaching side, is now wide receivers coach, not for some high school or college. He's the wide receivers coach for the San Francisco 49ers in the National Football League. So shout out to Leonard Hankerson.
Which the history of the receiver coaches there, I think, is pretty good, going on to do big things, right?
That's right. Yeah. So really impressive there. Adewale Ajomo from Hialeah. He played a game in the NFL. Physically good guy. Physically strong. Had some issues.
What's your lasting memory of him? I'll tell you what mine is.
What, getting his jaw broken by that walk on missing games?
Yeah,
and he had some things. He had some things with like jet skis or something. But he was a pretty good player.
Yes, that was recently though. That was after his career.
Miami. Kane Farquharson, that's right. One of the best names ever. Never really had the separation at the college level. Jared Campbell, Calais, his brother, physical player. He's actually a comedian now. I see him on TV doing all this kind of stuff. So he's doing big things in media. RIP to JoJo Nicholas from Homestead. Solid player. Had a car accident here by my house here in Miami Beach. I mean, just a tragedy, man. I hate there's too many RIPs in these workups, it sucks. The 2 guys that Shannon got there were like straight 2-stars were Tyler Horn out of Memphis and Daniel Adderley out of Greenville, South Carolina. Adderley didn't do anything, but Horn, who was like at a private school in Memphis, Stoutland found him, ended up being a really, really good player for us as a center. Stoutland, this was Jeff Stoutland, who, when we say Stoutland, we're talking about the number one offensive line coach on the planet now with the Philadelphia Eagles. He was our offensive line coach at this time. This was his first class. So, Franklin, NFL player, Harlan Gunn, NFL player, Tyler Horn, all ACC. So Stoutland wasn't messing around.
It's wild how many, and I can't say I remember what fans were saying about Stoutland at the time, D, but it's crazy how many of those coaches. I remember Clint Hurt not being a super popular guy down here, and you see what he's turned into in terms of his career. And I said this a couple of years ago, but he was Mario's first choice to be D coordinator when Mario first got here. That's who Mario wanted to hire, but he was in a very good situation with the Seahawks at the time. He wasn't their DC yet, if I remember correctly, but that's who Mario wanted to hire as D coordinator.
Yeah. He's come a long way.
Which would have been a great hire, obviously.
I wasn't the biggest fan of him when he was D-line coach myself, but he's worked his way up and improved, man. You get these guys are not, finished products.
My point being, like, it's interesting to see maybe 10, 15 years from now, looking back at some of the coaches the last few years that we have not been too happy with their results, and they may end up turning into good coaches.
Shannon's staff was outstanding. Tommy Robinson coaching the NFL, Wes McGriff coaching the NFL, now with Auburn. Who else did he have? Obviously, Stoutland's as good as it gets. Clint Hurd's the defensive coordinator. Tim Walton was a defensive coordinator in the NFL. I mean, he had a lot of NFL coaches on the staff. Nashville, talk about Leonard Hankerson worked with Mark Duper to get his hands better. That's absolutely right. Hands were his weakness. He worked on them, and maybe that led him to be a coach because he saw how much it helped him, right? What helped him go to that next level. Alec Cohn, where's the good Centennial apparel? Miami Hurricane Team Store, man. What are you asking about? At MiamiHTS.com, Alec, promo code Insight 20. Just in terms of other teams during this time, I think Florida, roll up a little bit, Pete. Florida, this was the year where Florida really won the national championship. Pouncey's, Chris Rainey, Joe Hayden, Aaron Hernandez, Carlos Dunlap, Major Wright, which was a loss for Miami here in St. Thomas. Cam Newton was in that class too. Can you imagine if Cam Newton stayed? Thank God that he left. That was one of the happiest moments of my life when Cam Newton transferred, because I knew he was going to be. I know he's going to be what he was, but I knew he was better than Brantley. I'd heard about him from all my Gator friends. You watch the film, you're like, man, this guy's a giant. He's a million times better than Brantley. So when he transferred, it was a sigh of relief. And obviously, I didn't know he was going to do what he ended up doing. But
a planted laptop, right? That's the theory.
Whatever it was, man, it worked, because if this guy was at the Gators, Urmeyer would have been continuing his run. So the run ended probably when Cam Newton transferred from this class. That's probably when the Gators fell apart, really. Noel Devine, I know you watched all those highlights going to West Virginia.
That's obviously an early recruiting memory. The YouTube, that was when YouTube was still like the king for highlights, right?
100%. Yeah. Sean David saying OC pick was Pat Nix. And that was as bad as a guy. It's true. Pat Nix, now a high school coach, bringing a full. So that was the one where Shannon really messed up on the staff that year, but Nix ended up going back. He's now he was a high school coach for Dalen Upshaw, who signed with Miami last year in Alabama, and his son, of course, Bo Nix, one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. Other thing in this era that I wanted to focus on from this class, Butch Davis got Marvin Austin from DC, which was a big loss, going head-to-head with our old coach, now back in the college game at North Carolina in the Coastal, and he got Marvin Austin, who ended up being a second-round pick. Butch signed Akeem Nicks, Jonathan Cooper, Quentin Copels, and Robert Quinn in the years to come. So, I mean, all those were first-round picks. So Butch took what he did at Miami and just transported it to North Carolina in the Coastal. Man, he was such a good evaluator of talent. Shout out Birdstone. Shout out to Streeter and everybody over there at Footballville. Had him on Sunday. That was a great episode. By the way, shout out to Alex Dono. I was on the Dono show before we recorded here. He was nice enough to invite me on there. We had a fun time talking. So shout out to Alex Dono. Check that out. I was on the Locked On Canes on YouTube. If you guys haven't seen it, I recognize a lot of familiar names in the chat. But yeah, man, I mean, all told, this is a good transition class. I like to say, like, biggest disappointment, we talked about Marve. The lesson learned, I think, on this class, Pete, is if you look at the guys that made it, Orlando Franklin and Allan Bailey, you cannot think of two better looking players coming off the bus as far as their size. Adewale Ajomo looked the part in high school. Hankerson was a receiver, but he looked the part at receiver. And then you look at some of the guys that didn't make it, which is going to be like your Lee Chambers, your Jermaine McKenzie's, your Doug Wiggins. They just didn't look like those other guys we're talking about. So I think, at some point, it's important how these guys look coming off the bus. They got to play as well, but you don't underestimate body types. And I think with Mario Cristobal, one big thing you're seeing is that he makes sure that the guys he's getting look the right way off the bus. He's not getting a lot of undersized players. We're talking about Cortez Redding and some guys like that could potentially come in the class as undersized guys. But I think by and large, Mario really focuses on body types. And you saw that in this class with Randy Shannon, that the guys that made it looked the part coming into school.
Sean David said Hakeem Nicks was a dog. Him and Brandon Tate, man, that was a nice wide receiver duo. North Carolina always gave us issues. They had that. It was in 04 when they beat us. The kicker who was an NFL, ended up being an NFL kicker. Connor Barth was the kicker.
Yeah, that's right.
And he beat us. And they always just gave us issues. They've always given us problems.
Yeah, but it was just amazing, because you go in this class, and we started with the 2001 class, which was the transition class from Butch to Coker. So you really saw what Butch's classes look like, and it was totally elite. And then it's been a straight downhill till you get to this. This is literally rock bottom. Like, I'm going to do a graph after this where you see some of these numbers on a graph form, and you see the winning percentage and the NFL numbers just plummet under Coker until boom, right here with Shannon, he kind of stops the bleeding and turns in another direction, not like a super sharp direction, but back up, which was so good. And now you see in this time, he's doing the same thing in North Carolina.
Yep, without a doubt.
So Jaden Hewitt, who just did an article for us on Canes Insight, shout out to Jaden Hewitt, talking about our schedule, which you can read on Canes Insight for free. He's doing some research on Mario's Oregon teams. And he's saying, I noticed that even if he has undersized guys that are solid, he will make up for with like Markel Bell types, people movers. Yeah, a lot of size on those offensive lines for Mario Cristobal. So that's definitely something that you see when you look at those Oregon teams. I'm looking forward to that article from Jaden Hewitt on CanesInsight.com. 7.5 million posts and counting, free articles. And sign up for free.
All right, Canes fans, keep it locked on Canes Insight all week. We didn't stop all week. We kept it going on through the weekend. Obviously, there was the circumstances of the recruit who did not choose Miami that kept us on there. But camp's approaching, man. So it's only going to keep going, and we're going to keep bringing you guys the content here. So I'm going to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, go to CanesInsight.com as well. Sign up completely free. Go Canes.
Go Canes.